This program is brought to you by Bobway Media, a work of the Chipman Road Church of Christ in Lee's Summit, Missouri, and under the oversight of the elders of the Chipman Road Church of Christ. We thank you for listening.
Hello, ladies. I hope you're all having a very good day today. We're going to look at Job chapter 1, verses 1 through 4 for just a moment here. And our lesson is going to be about lift up your eyes and observe the Lord. God's everywhere, isn't he, ladies? We can see him in everything, every part of our bodies, the way they're made, the way we move, the way we have our vision, our hearing, and everything. We have nothing without him. But we're going to look at Job here, so hopefully you have a Bible handy and can follow along in Job 1, verses 1 through 4. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, and 3,000 camels, and 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 she-asses, and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the East. We're going to stop right there at verse 3, and I don't think that we're going to need to move on any further with our podcast today. You can look at that, and the first thing that just jumps out at all of us is when God says he was an perfect and upright and one that feared God and eschewed evil. It doesn't get much better than that, does it, ladies? That's the kind of man we want to be our husbands. That's the kind of man our sons should yearn to be. Perfect before God, upright. Fearing God, respecting him. And eschewing evil just means staying as far away from it as he can, as much as lies within him. So I got to thinking about that, and I thought about how I feel when I look up to the presence of God hovering above, when I look to the heavens and behold his majesty, and when I look at the spattering of billions of stars shining down to light up my night, twinkling, as if they were put there just for me, for my pleasure, and I know they were, and yours too. But we do try to personalize things, don't we? As we should. He did it for you. He did it for me. We want that inside of us, knowing that he is always in our presence. He gave us the sun to shine as bright as it could and to make us feel warm and comfortable and to give growth to the earth, but also to us. His lesser light, the moon, gives me comfort and peace. It instills within me a feeling of consistency, stability, and a sense of order. But also, we know it's a sense of romance and curiosity, a yearning to go beyond and to dream. Did he know that it would make us feel secure, give us a sense of tranquility and wonder? Of course he did. He's our Father. He knows exactly what we need. Every moment of every day, he can feel my amazement and wonder and awe, and I'm hoping that that pleases him very much. I had a little poem for just 8 verses that I was going to share with you. Can you feel him in the trees, in the changing falling leaves? See his beauty in the flowers, in the gentle morning showers. That's our God. He's the great I am. It only takes those 2 tiny words to describe the one who made it all. To him be the glory forever and ever. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them by the names of greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power. Not one faileth. Isaiah 40:26. And Job states in Job 12:10, in whose hand is the soul of every living thing and the breath of all mankind. Now, thinking of Job and remembering that comment I made about Job being perfect in God's sight and stayed as far from evil as he could be, we have this situation where Job goes through a whole series of grief and loss the greatest loss you can imagine. Everything, every single thing he lost, except his life and his wife. Most people would be driven to such depression that it would be unbelievable. Job even said at one point, "I wish I had never been born." That's a very drastic comment for a perfect and upright man, isn't it? But he is a man. And I think often we don't think much about that, but I don't know of anyone who suffered such loss in such a brief period of time and came out on the other end blessed. But as the story goes on in the book of Job, he has these three friends, mind you, friends. And they come to him and they sit with him for 7 days and don't speak. That's amazing in and of itself, isn't it? To just sit and not talk to him. They're laying their friendship to carry Job through these horrible times. And we know that God has a hand in this. Matter of fact, it's all his hand. But we also know that these people were able to somewhat comfort him just by being there and not even opening their mouth. The sad thing is, on down the line, we see in Job 1, 4 through 6, that Job has a complaint. He says, "My friends mock and misunderstand me." And I think it's important that we kind of listen to what he says, because this is Job giving a rant to the people he knows the best that care for him. And it's amazing the response. He says, I am mocked by his friends. Who calls on God? And he answers him, the just and blameless, who is ridiculed, a lamp despised in the thought of one who is at ease. It is made ready for those whose feet slip. The tents of robbers prosper, and those who provoke God are secure in what God provides by his hand. So, okay, he's mocked by his friends. Job is complaining that even though he was a godly man, one who God called on and he answered, a man who was just and blameless, even so he was mocked and ridiculed. Okay, the way that innocent Job was mocked by others reminds us of what Jesus endured in his sufferings on the cross, doesn't it? He was mocked by soldiers who beat him, Matthew 27:29. He was mocked by the chief priests as he hung on the cross, Matthew 27:41. And he was ridiculed by others, Mark 15:27-31. And that just touches the hem of the garment. A lamp despised in the thought of one who is at ease. That's kind of what is being said there. Job remembers what his life used to be, at ease. All of the things that he had, his blessings, his children, his wife, his cattle, his sheep, all of that, his properties, all of this because he was a man of God and God blessed him. He used to call on God and receive an answer. And in those bright days, he didn't feel like he needed a lamp because his life was at ease. Now everything has changed, and his own friends are mocking him now and misunderstanding him. Those who provoke God are secure. Now it seemed to Job that his life and prior understanding was upside down. Before everything seemed to make sense, the righteous seemed to be blessed and the wicked seemed to be afflicted. But now it's all different. It's all shook up, topsy-turvy. Job did not give up on God, but he had to give up on his prior understanding of God. Job's creed had crumbled to ruins. Therefore, he says, I leave my creed, but I deny that I have left God. So I think in that remark, we see a lot of humanity that we often face today, don't we? He just explains his understanding of God's ways to his friends who had come to help and started out being kind and wound up accusing him of bringing all of this upon himself, which he did not. This was done between God. If you go back to the first part of Job there and read through the beginning, this was Satan's device, not God's. God allowed Satan to tempt him, but he did not tempt him himself, because God cannot tempt nor be tempted. We can read that in the New Testament. So Job is in pain in every way possible to mankind, loaded with all kinds of boils on his body, so much so that he could barely sit down. All his family taken away from him, all of his cattle taken away from him, all of his maiden manservants. The only thing that was left that in his possession, so to speak, was his wife. And she even told him at one point to curse God and die, because we don't really know why. I don't doubt as a wife that she was so sad for him. Everything was gone. And she knew that if he did that, he would die if he cursed God, but he would not give up his belief and faith. So we need to figure out what in the world he's going to tell his friends now. So in verse 7 through 12, he explains this here. But now ask the beasts, and they will teach you. Beasts, and the birds of the air, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. And the fish of the sea will explain to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this, and in whose hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind? Does not the ear test words, and the mouth taste its food? Wisdom is with aged men, and with length of days, understanding. Now ask the beasts. Job is expounding on the idea that was first made in Job 12:3. Indeed, who does not know such things as this? And the book of Job is really so interesting because you see God and him having a dialogue back and forth. You see his friends and him starting out feeling so much sympathy, and then all of a sudden they start, hearing and seeing all this and thinking, well, you must have sinned, Job. Surely you sinned because God is punishing you. And at some point, Job actually gets kind of irritated with Zophar, and he just kind of goes off on him, and it's kind of funny. He made that statement about the birds and the beasts and of the field and things such as that, and then along down in verse 13 through 25, he talks about the great power of God. He's just fighting for this. He needs them to support him. Friends are important when you're experiencing disaster. Who is going to be there to touch you, feel you, help you, provide for you? We don't have the same law today that they had back under the old law of Moses and the prophets, so he had to help appeal to his friends to help but muster his strength to keep on going, because he was a perfect and upright man. So in verses 13 through 25 of chapter 1, Job describes the great power of God. With him are wisdom and strength. He has counsel and understanding. If he breaks a thing down, it cannot be rebuilt. If he imprisons a man, there can be no release. If he withholds the waters, they dry up. If he sends them out, they overwhelm the earth. With him are strength and prudence. The deceived and the deceiver are his. He leads counselors away plundered. He makes fools of the judges, loosens the bonds of kings, binds their waist with the belt, leads princes away plundered, overthrows the mighty, deprives the trusted one of speech. And we could go on and on and on. He enlarged nations and guide them. He takes away the understanding of the chiefs of the people of the earth and makes them wander in a pathless wilderness. They grope in the dark without light, and he makes them stagger like a drunken man. With him are wisdom and strength. He has counsel and understanding. So in this section, Job rebuked the previous speech of Zophar in Job 11, especially where Zophar criticizes Job for not knowing God and likened him to an empty-headed man. Job 11, 17 through 12. Here Job shows that he did indeed know that God was great in wisdom, strength, and that his was mighty in counsel and understanding. Job's message to his friends was clear. I do know God and how great he is. Don't criticize me on this point any longer. That sounds pretty much to me like he's done. Have you ever been there? Have you ever had a friend actually, or a multiplicity of friends, come at you and start judging your heart and your soul and your intent, not really knowing the whole situation? That would be difficult, wouldn't it? Especially when God himself has made it plain that you were upright and righteous. But Job, in the long run, if you read through the whole book, which is a little bit of a lengthy book in the Bible, but if you read through it slowly and process it, you see one of the most beautiful things that you'll ever see, in my opinion. And that is the conversation that Job gets to have with God. When he was losing his family and all of this, and his friends, no one had any confidence in him. There he sat, actually. It was all he could do to sit. And he felt forlorn. And his wife wasn't as much comfort as he would have liked for it to be. Either she couldn't handle seeing him suffer so much, or she needed him because she'd lost all of her family as well, or whatever. But we see her bringing him no real help, the help that God would have him to be, a good man and things like this. She instead told him to curse God and die. I don't believe she meant it for a moment. I think she just was overwhelmed and could not handle watching him suffer. And I only say that from the perspective of someone who's been married 62 years. So I'm just saying it would be hard if you love your husband to sit and watch all that go down. I don't think she was a bit concerned about the riches that went away. I think she was concerned for his immediate possible death from his horrifically painful things that had been thrust upon him. But it's likely that when his friends turned on him, and Zophar and these people thought he had sinned, when all the while he was such a good man, he would offer up sacrifices immediately for his children in the mornings. It's pretty hard to get any better than that when you're talking about a godly man. So my thought for you today, after we've said all that, I should say after I've said all that, is for you to think about how we need to treat our friends, how we need to treat our enemies, how we need to treat our brethren, or just anyone that has problems in their life, or feels ill, or whatever, or suffers loss. We need to have a kind heart and do what we can to help them, and not start challenging them to say, well, how in the world did all this turn out for you? How come this happened? How come that happened? Maybe we need to just let people be pensive about the whole thing, hold their hand, so to speak, figuratively, and then be there for them. Just be there. What can I do to help? That's what we need to be asking. Not, well, you must have done something wrong, or well, why did you walk this way or walk that way? Okay, got a point. I understand. But once it's done and you're miserable, that's the time to take advantage of that point and try to get them to get their thought process back on God again, which, after a period of time, the devil will slip in if you let that go. Even Job could fall, because no man can be sinless, for all men sin and fall short of the glory of God. But when they do, repent, be there to hold their hand and pick them up. And I thank you for listening.
We hope you have enjoyed today's program. You can find out more about Bob Wade Media by visiting our website at bobwademedia.org, as well as finding us on social media. And as always, to God be the glory.